brilliant. But I'm just asking, well, I wonder why, if they just decided tonight, you know, so that they couldn't let us know. Or I wonder if, had they let the public know, there would have been a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe they're cutting costs, but who knows? They can
But
only afford one phone call.
Well, if that's it, then maybe you let us know as well, because if it's cutting costs, for argument's sake, Dr. Bartlett, whose money it is, so we will know we're saving money, right?
Yeah. And I would appreciate saving a little money, but not on this. To be quite honest with you, I would spend, I would have even lent him a phone. I mean, something. You don't sit around all night having people in suspense as if you owe them I mean, just
no explanation.
Right,
And I remember a few years ago as well, I came here because when I went to vote, there was a poll clerk who was so rude. A young lady, so rude. And then I used I mentioned it. So I think people should understand that. When you're serving people, that's what you're doing. If you don't want to serve them, when people ask you, you tell them no thanks. So I like to know. I mean, as I said, it probably, if I get the logic for it and so on, it might be super. But still, my preference is I would have preferred that you let the public know.
Well, true. I think they owe the public an explanation as to what and to why they have changed the system. But it has been changed, and I believe it has been changed for the better. And you've just made the comparison that it is not a full election, and therefore this is a new run.
We had a by-election before.
Well, we had a by-election before.
And we used the same system. But I get your point. You said that it perhaps is so that we can get the results earlier, right?
But it's quarter to 9
Quite
and
true.
we haven't heard a thing yet.
Well, that's why
Maybe you're going to get everything at 9 o'clock.
I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm giving Mr. Stanley the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, that being said, I just wanted the public to know. And that is the reason why you haven't heard anything as yet. That is a new system, and when we get the results, we are going to get everything at the same time, and hopefully, as I said, probably we'll be out of here, because a lot of folks think that they know what the eventual outcome will be, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Webo, the new supervisor, Mr. Bailey, I always admire him because he communicates to the public quite often. In the newspaper, I'm sure he have written quite a lot of, communicating with the public. So at this junction where he decides not to, but to do that only once, it's quite different to what I'm expecting of him, really, because as I say, communication is the key, and without that, people can start feeling, especially when there's such a responsibility that involves an individual and the whole magnitude of the exercise of an election. I think communication is fundamental as the results unfold, the various stages and steps going forward. Would have been a better stand, definitely. But we are yet to realize if there's an advantage, I guess, whenever he decides to make the announcement. Let's hope it's not like 5 hours away. Let's hope it's pretty soon. I've been here till 8 o'clock.
Still didn't get the result.
The next morning sometimes, and still didn't get the result. I'm sure the last by-election I was here, it was a long haul too. A very, very long haul. And so we're yet to realize if there's an advantage with this new method of doing it. And I hope there is, especially as it relates to time. But at the same time, we don't want to bring no dark clouds over the election and introduce that feeling of doubt and unfairness. So I think, if I'm to weigh it up all, I would say to continue to communicate at every instance when there is a reason to. We got 5 boxes would be coming in.
Yes.
And of course, it would have been a good thing if we can
Get at least one.
get one.
It's 9 o'clock now.
And comment about it,
And the
let
poll
the
will be
public
closed in
digest
6.
that, and we'll have a hearty night. Really, it's what we are. You know, election coverage is. You know, it's not always. It's very sad for some people, but for me, I do enjoy it, and it's about really keeping the public engaged and saying things of importance as it relates to the exercise which we are covering, really.
Because the truth is here, I don't think that the supervisor necessarily has any handle or he's not the one counting the ballots. So as the process goes, I don't think he can make it any faster necessarily. Because if people decided they wanted recounts or whatever, and if they're stuck on one box, it means that all of the results are stuck with him until such times. You know, so the people who would have voted in the NIPAC box, we can't even compare what they would have done. They can't even go to bed feeling, okay, well, we would have done our part, you know, and go to sleep. You know, they have to wait until maybe they have some toss-up. Well, not likely anyway. Let me just say.
I don't see why
I think we
this
should
thing,
be out of here by 11 o'clock.
I don't see why this is going to take us this long, because one, you've got just one constituency. Sure, we have different precincts, but at the same time, you don't have to wait for communication from St. John
So what's the point?
and St. James. And in as much as we have far less boxes to count, far fewer votes, as the case might be, we should be able to mathematically deduce it to one constituency instead of 5, simply because it is a by-election and it's only being held in one constituency.
Yeah, but precedence has been set. That is the point I made earlier, that there was once a by-election and they didn't get the results until 8 o'clock in the morning.
I've just got some information from the county area, the Cotton Ground police station, and count seem to be going along nicely based on my information that I'm getting. You know, there are only 5 boxes. Is it 5?
Yes.
5 boxes. And they have, and I don't know, well, let me just say, they have at least, I understand, 2 persons per box. So they're doing it simultaneously and pretty fast and so on and so forth. So I think that we should be getting something early, right? My only question mark about our question that I have, and I'll ask the supervisor of election. You see, in my view, sometimes I don't know why people hide certain things. But I would just like to ask, why wasn't the public informed? For instance, the supervisor of election was here this morning, you know, and right here at the station in the news and explaining and stuff like that, right? Because it could be a very good idea. So if it's a very good idea, it helps the process and so on. Why you don't want to tell people? But again, I get it. That's how people govern. That's how the society is. I get it.
No, Wembo, if it was a good idea, we would have shared it with everybody. That is one of the worst ideas I ever had related to thing. And Elvin is my friend, Mr. Bailey is my friend, but I think that was a terrible idea. I don't know where he came up with that. I don't know why he brought it up, but I think he should try and go back to the original. When you get the results, publish them as you get them.
Yeah, you see, that's why I asked a question, whether or not if that system is less transparent than the other system where, you know, you're getting it box by box and, you know, and so on and so forth. So you know what's happening, if you will, every step of the way.
Yes. I think it's a more transparent process. I agree with you on that one. Once you release the results, as you get them. But to be holding on to them, I don't know that is helping the process at all as it relates to transparency. It doesn't. Not in my view.
Okay, maybe we can go on to something else quickly. The Concerned Citizens Movement, their main theme for this campaign was that they were asking the people of the St. Thomas Parish number 5, because, you know, there are 4 seats of the 5, and their view was, or their argument was, give us all 5 seats. St. Thomas says, you send somebody straight into government, and the opposition, or the Nevis Reformation Party, was arguing, no, let us have this representative, right? So how is that for an argument on both sides?
Well, each side is going to put forth an argument for their own interest. And in that regard, the CCM kept reiterating, you would have somebody in cabinet, then obviously when the pie is being divvied up, you would be able to get a larger share. Some people argue that based on governance, the Premier, his cabinet, the Nevis Island administration run by the CCM should look out for everybody. And I think they have been looking out for everybody based on what I've seen. In that regard, their justification for attempting to ask for the 5 seats is justified. On the other hand, the NRP now is going to say, well, you've got 4, as the CCM has. Leave us with the 1 we've got, return it to us, and at least we would have some semblance of a say in the governance of Nevis. It's an argument, and both sides will, of course, be as forceful as it can to, in fact, ask for that seat to remain in the hands of the NRP.
But what do you think, though?
You know, it's interesting.
For me, if I were governing, give me the 5 seats, because the buck stops with me. And I'm going to tell people, look, let us be fair. Let us have a level playing field. And in this regard, everybody gets their share of the pie. That's how I see things. That's one of the reasons why I always stated that if I had been elected, I would only serve 1 term, because the buck stops with me. And anybody who does what they
but
feel...
you don't need 5 seats for that.
Donald Trump.
You don't need 5 seats for that.
You know,
if you have a pie...
Yeah, Dr. Bader just wanted to mention, I'll come back to you, I just wanted to mention that people are weighing in on the discussion about this. Somebody has just sent me a message. And by the way, I think if you all would like to call, you can call and weigh in on the same changing of the way they're going to report it. And this person says they strongly disagree with it. And they're giving their different reasons why. Now, I prefer not to, speak for persons. That's why I'm inviting persons. They can go on the website, they can leave a comment, you can call in, we can accommodate you to get your feedback on it. As I said, it's just my view that going forward and so on, one should be as transparent as possible. Notwithstanding you have the power to do something, because I was mentioning earlier that when the journalist went into one of the polling areas, one of the clerks told them, and it was only one, everybody else, they're not going to give them any numbers. All they wanted to know, well, at this point in time, how was the voting going, about how many people have voted? And she refused to tell her. Sometimes these things, and it doesn't make sense, you complain to the higher-ups because they will endorse it as well. But it's just an example of what sometimes we have to face in order to see how best we can do a job on behalf of the public. Yes, Dr. Bartlett.
Well, I was not continuing on that. I just wanted to respond to something that Edric said that's related to this pie. And he seemed to think that it takes 5 people to share one pie. But if you had a pie and you wanted to share it, I think if you have 5 constituencies, you should share the pie in 5. You have 1/5, everybody get 1/5, irrespective of who is at the table to ask for that 1/5. However, I don't think that the argument that Nevis people have been putting forward within recent times has necessarily been about who getting what part of the pie, well, apart from the double bubble thing. I think most people were more concerned that they needed more pie. So you really need more people who would, not come to the table just to share the little that is there, but would come with ideas as to how we can make a bigger pie, And I don't know that you necessarily need 5 people all talking about the same thing or sharing this, the same ideology to really get, us to that point. Because divisions are not agitating necessarily because I've never heard anybody in St. Thomas's, maybe it happens, but I'm just saying I've never heard anybody in St. Thomas's looking over Brownlee and saying that Brownlee is getting more than St. Thomas's. I've never heard that argument. Maybe it is being proffered, but I've never heard it. So I think, we have to be careful. The last time, you have this all 8 in St. Kitts, I didn't think that it worked out, that everybody was getting a fair share either. I don't know why any government might want to just monopolize on all of the power. I understand the ego associated with that, but it's about time that we move away from that. We're not in China, where you have no opposition. This is a democracy, and don't encourage people to vote along. I understand the party thing appeal as well. Telling people, you have somebody at the table. Oh, have there somebody at the table? What? That's not what we really need. We need a bigger pie.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Bartlett. Based on your philosophy, were it you at the head of this particular government, you were the premier and you had 4 seats, and this final seat become vacant, you'll do what?
Well, I would have said already how I felt about it. I thought I wouldn't even contest the seat. That for me is a foregone conclusion. I wouldn't waste money over there because you have a general election coming up.
But that's not natural.
I would have. No, there's a man thing. This is my perspective as a woman. I'm saying it makes no sense. But tonight the figures won't bear it out. If indeed, after we would have gotten the lump sum of information one time, and we realized that maybe the CCM did win, and say, okay, these guys knew what they were saying, but I doubt it. For me, it's a waste of time. I wouldn't necessarily try to hog power. You're already in the driver's seat. How many drivers you need?
This has nothing to do with man or woman. This has something to do. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of things.
Yes, and that's
human beings
for too long.
operate a certain way, and regardless to what the gender is, you want to ensure that you have seats to play with. If you lose one, then it means that you're one less. If you gain one, it means that you have more at least to play with. And nobody's going to tell me based on gender, you're going to be satisfied with 4 seats when one is there available and you're not going to go after it. That's not natural.
But what is the advantage of going after the other one?
It's simply because you would have at least galvanized yourself into that realm where you have plenty to play with. Just like more money is more money, more power, more power, more seats, more seats. And nobody's going to tell me.
It's not
and
don't be
disingenuous by making that statement and think people will buy it.
No, but
nobody's going to buy that. The nature of the beast.
Not nature of your beast, darling.
Not
mine.
my beast.
You're already in control. You can't be in more control than you are now. Would
tell you that regardless of what the gender is, it's available. The Constitution does not deny you from acquiring the 5th seat, and you will go after it. Well, and anybody who doesn't go after it would be foolhardy. So categorize yourself as to where you are, whether you would be going after that seat to ensure that you've got a lot in terms of seats, numbers. It's a game of numbers. That's politics.
No, it would be a game of numbers for me if I were in a cabinet and I could not get the support of the people in there. I can get an extra one, I could understand that. But if you have and it seems like it's a brotherhood and everything is going on well, you have 4 inside there, you have control. You don't need 5 people to make a decision on spending the little small cash that we have. Really, we don't.
Well,
We're top heavy.
not that I'm cutting off Dr. Bartlett, but
Oh, no, I'm done.
our argument, Weber, was very simple.
And natural.
The people of St. Thomas's had a decision to make. And that decision for us was very simple. Whether they wanted to send someone to the parliament to be on the opposition side, simply to be on the opposition side, stake, or whether they wanted to have a representative in parliament and in cabinet. And that for us was a legitimate argument. We felt, Weber, that to elect someone in the parliament simply to be on the opposition, not necessarily allow the people of St. Thomas's to have the kind of voice that we feel that they needed to have. We felt, Weber, that electing someone and putting them in the cabinet would allow the people of St. Thomas's to have a greater voice. And I'm going to tell you, Weber, I have sat in cabinet now for 2 years. And while the Premier would have probably the ultimate decision in terms of the allocation of monies and so on, there is a real fight within around that table as to how every single cent is going to be spent, and every single minister in that cabinet often fight about something within their constituency and within their community, separate and apart from their ministry. So, not that as a government we would have neglected St. Thomas's. We are not saying that. We have never done that. We have seen where the NRP would have been in government, taking over in 2006 after CCM, and they have left a number of projects languished there for 5 years, 6.5 years. CCM has never done that. If we felt in government that there was something that was on the ground that was in the best interests of the community, we continued it. One such initiative was the housing there in Cotton Ground. CCM could have gone in and said, well, NRP started it, we are not going to do anything to it, and we are going to leave it until such time. We did not take that approach.
Mr. Brand, conversely, were you out of government and the seat become vacant? You were out of government, you were in opposition,
Yes.
and a seat became vacant on the opposition side. What would you have done?
Well, but I don't have a problem with someone who is on the opposition side fighting for that seat. Don't get me wrong. As a political party and as a political organization, that political party and that political organization would always want to be in parliament or in government. We simply use the argument that give yourself that voice, that extra voice, that hand, that representative in cabinet, and that is all that we were saying.
Well, it meant even more than that. It tells you exactly how popular you as a leader, you as a party, you as those people who are at the top of the pyramid in terms of governance. And therefore, the news would not only be local, but it would be regional and even international, that the CCM has gone after the 5 seats. And if you're successful tonight, it would not only be stated locally, but nationally and regionally.
And also if you're unsuccessful.
Obviously.
Okay.
So therefore...
By the way, I've just gotten some indication that they're more than halfway through. So
We get in there.
they're getting there. Well, we're trying our best to give you the public, the best thing that. See, my own view is that whenever you're serving people and the public, you must do it with the utmost respect as possible to find out what they really would like and see whether or not if it is possible and feasible for you to have done it. For instance, we came in here this evening and we said we've got a new initiative that will make it easier, we think, for the public to understand the count and as it's going on, to be as transparent as possible and so on. And then I also said, give us a comment. Leave a comment on the website, see whether or not. And it is all in trying to serve the public so that they can feel. I asked the supervisor of election, mainly because people always will ask us, why does the count have to stay so long? When I had the opportunity, I said to the supervisor of election, are we going to have an early night? And he said, yes, he thinks so. You see, so that's all I'm saying. Now, keep this in mind. I always like to add this footnote. I know a lot of people will be upset with me because I point that out. But then at my age and at my stage, I can't change. I have to be me, right? That's how I think.
But Webo, just to put something in context, right? You know, you ever turn off your TV, like if you're having problems with Digicel, and then you try to reboot the whole thing, and then it goes initializing, and then it goes, and it's up to 97%, and then it stays there for another day. I'm like, you know, you got to 97% fast, you know, but it's the last 3%, and you still have to wait. You still not get the service. And I'm like, okay, we're almost halfway there. Let's see how long the other half takes. My question is not whether or not it will be fast, we'll get the results, you know, earlier or not. Because, in my view, if you have already counted 3 boxes, suppose you have 5. Why can't you tell us you have already counted 3 boxes? Because the vote is already the vote. And Mr. Brand has 100 and so have 50. And so why can't you tell us that? Now, there might be a good reason why. All I'm saying is, you know, what's the difficulty in let us know how you came to that and so on and so forth?
It's unusual. I mean, I don't think that it's not something that we have had before. You know, we are accustomed to get this box and then you go to, you know, it kind of takes out.
And somebody was asking earlier, you know, I hope people don't, was it you, Naya, who think, well, there's some, or it might been Dr. Bradley, I wonder if there's something, fishy, you know, that you get all of the numbers before people, you know, you know all the numbers, and then, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes, as happened in the United States, if you're getting the numbers, the total updated, you know, they say we project so-and-so is the winner. Mm-hmm. All those things help to make things transparent.
And easier to accept, I suppose, you know, Webo.
Yes.
Some people may not be in the best of health and might get a shock that, you know, take them out sometimes. That's when it's really close and things are really hype up, you know. I mean, you can adjust yourself as you go along and realize, look, I'm going to lose tonight, you know, and...
The other thing I'm here thinking, I wonder if it's going to be, well, if we know ahead of time that this is what is going to be happening for the federal election as well, it wouldn't make too much, you know, maybe we'll know what time to come in. Because imagine you have 11 constituencies, you know what I'm saying? And then we have to wait all night to get an idea of what happened. Because here is it again, in terms of information and people wanting to know, being transparent. We even today and for the past years, we would go around by the polling stations during the day.
Yes.
And people wait and listen for that. I wonder how the vote is going. A lot of people are turning out. Things are slow, etc., etc., etc. So I think sometimes we don't appreciate how important a particular process is and what it does. And that's why you basically do it, to try and be as transparent as possible.
Well, you have to be creative, and if for some reason they decide to change the strategy, we on Vaughan Radio, as commentators, you as the host, you have to be creative in terms of determining what you're going to do with that time.
Well,
And
that's
thus-
what I'm doing.
Yes, yes, and therefore,
One of the things that I'm being creative and doing with the time is giving my view about it. And asking
so.
questions, well, why couldn't that let us know?
Yeah, because it will let us know. At least Stanley could have brought one of his poems to keep us engaged. For 2
whatever,
hours, maybe.
whatever.
But at the very least, but I was about to say that maybe we will know for the federal election how it is. But who knows? Maybe on the same night we may hear this is how it's going to be done. Mr. Brand, what do you think? You see, you're in government, so let me put you.
Well, like I said, personally, I think that it takes the intrigue out of the whole process. As I was saying tonight, I've been there, so looking back at what would have happened in 2017, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it. I think 2017, when I put myself in this position, I mean, I had my highs and my lows, and you went into that state of mind, and you begin to scratch your head, and I think you get all of it at once. It just, I don't know, it kind of takes some of the fun out of it, actually. That's my personal opinion.
I don't think the pendulum is going to swing to one side or from one side to the other. They might be able to change the strategy, but not change it totally, because they know, obviously, there are 11 constituencies, and in that regard, so much information has to come to the fore, and the people will be waiting for that information, and as a result, it has to come in segments. A little bit here, a little bit there, and so much. I mean, we know the process, but even though the supervisor of election is new, he is not going to come up completely with a new system to disseminate information.
Let me go to this caller. I was inviting comments. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening, brother.
Yes.
I am intrigued by what I am calling the decision to bring these results in en bloc. I don't know if it has been informed by what happened the last time at the federal elections, because elections have been that they call out results for one constituency, and then they wait late to call out the results for another constituency. And maybe that is creating a sort of indignance in the system, in terms of saying, if you call out Sandy Point, all of Sandy Point, and not all of Cleone, why not? Because everybody is counting at the same time. And I think that sometimes when the results are in, the people are strategic. Sometimes they say if the Prime Minister has lost the government, you give him time to clean out and go someplace. One time, one Prime Minister had come to 4 seasons. The Premier must be told certain things in order to cushion the effects of matters. I do take the point that if the results are coming in as they have come in, and as you're right, Trevor, that you could comment and say, well, what are your projections, and you don't think this, don't think that. And the dynamics of those things, I think we have lost, and those were very good for reporting and for radio. But I think Mr. Bailey, who is also my good friend, must be saying, well, look, if I throw all the results one time, I might end up not like right George or wrong George. And I might end up on the right side of the table if the electorate gets all the results one time en bloc.
Well, caller, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
But you don't think the electorate has a right to know that we're going to change up the system and how it's going to be done and what to...
I'm going to come down hard on that. Give me notice. Do not kidnap me, and don't hijack me, and don't hoodwink me. Tell me, even as, and I know Bailey has been speaking, as you said, he was there this morning, you said it, right?
Yes.
Tell us tonight it's going to be en bloc, and it's not going to be incremental. And then, because I believe he's trialing this out, so use in the federal election that all results come in one time, so that the people at number 9 don't rejoice and wait for the people at number 1. Everybody comes in one time, everybody rejoices.
Yeah.
If that is so, I believe we should have a discussion on it, Matthew. because I don't think he should just tell us so and that's have a discussion, and I will be happy to hear your panel on those discussions and hear you yourself, Weber, when that decision is made, but that decision must be made 2-3 months before the election.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Hello, good evening.
Put some excitement in the night by all of you deciding or guessing who would win.
Okay. All right, yes. Yes, Cedric, you wanted to?
Well, they said, just by the last caller, of course, he's looking to be entertained based on our thought
by
processes.
You. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Good evening, you're on the air.
Oh, good evening.
You're on the air, could you go ahead?
Yes, good evening. I would like to make a comment on the other issue you were talking about concerning having a voice in the cabinet, and as opposed to having a voice in the opposition.
Yes, go ahead, please. Caller, what you want to do for me, please? Turn your radio down. You're on the air, and go ahead with your point.
Okay, I've turned the radio down. I've turned the radio down.
Yes, could you go ahead?
Okay, this is my view, okay? This is how I see it. When it comes to a seat being vacant, I think that both sides should have the privilege to contest that seat. But that doesn't have anything to do with who wins the election and how the people of the country are taken care of. So if there are 5 seats and you have the winner gets 3 or 4 out of the 5, once those results are in, the administration should go to work to look after all the people. It's not about having a voice in cabinet. You're responsible for all the people. But if there is a vacant seat, the opposition and the incumbent has a right to contest that seat. That is my view.
Okay.
But
all right.
Once you win, look after all the people.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Mr. Weber. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
What I'm trying to find out, right, is, Joe, I can't hear the radio station to go an FM search, an AM search, trying to find out what the number is at FM, if I could pick you up on FM.
93.7.
Okay, then, thanks.
Yes. Naya, you wanted to say something? Yes. Okay, just hold. Yes, hello, good evening.
Mr. Herbert, good night. It doesn't matter to me who government in power. As long as you're in power, you should look after each and every constituent, because everybody in Nevis, as long as you're working, you have to pay tax. That's my simple contribution.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I agree with the last 2 callers totally. But Webber, sometimes I think, people like Sir Joseph Parry, who was in the opposition for so long, sometimes I think they underestimate their role because they're not in government. I think even though they're not in government, they can be seriously effective.
Okay, Naya, I'll come back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Weber, good evening. I'm not really getting no election buzz because of all the counts, everything going to call one time. I'm not really getting no election buzz. I rather we count them box by box, and then you got predictions, and leave everybody in a state of preparedness or in a state of anticipation. So I'm not really getting the election vibes right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yes, Naya.
Yeah, I was saying, well, sometimes I think they underestimate their importance and their relevance in the constituency, even though they are not in government. Like for instance, the Honourable Roberto Hector, who Mr. Brand, took out in the last election. I believe Webber, people in that position must stay very close to the community. I believe they still can be very active in communicating with the electorate. I believe they can put certain amount of pressure on the government to do things which is needed to be done and highlight these things and mobilize people mentally or otherwise to get these things done if it's really important. So sometimes I think they're lazy. Their government is not in power, but they are an elected representative, and they don't function. They don't function. They don't commune with the electorate, and actually, increases the fervor of the whole exercise, and just try to make. They come around the next election, days or months before that, but they don't seem to work all the way through that 5 years and put themselves in a stronger position. Some don't have to do it, like Mr. Parry, he don't have to come out. But somebody like, say, Mr. Roberto Hector, who was not too strong, I think he could have done a lot more work in his constituency and maybe give Mr. Brand a little more headache. What I'm saying, they sometimes fall back, and I say it's laziness and,
you think
not
some
love for the people, because some people are people.
You think
and some
sometimes
people come to the people in the name of politics, and that needs to be really looked at seriously.
You think sometimes it can be that a system is a certain way in terms of its procedure and the way it is laid out, but people do not work the system the way it is. In other words, when you look at it, a couple of the callers says, well, the government should look after everybody. That is how it's supposed to be. Mr. Brand is also correct. The way the system sets out, it's a representation, by representation, which says that if your area you elect Mr. Brand as your representative, Mr. Brand will represent you in the parliament. Mr. Stanley will represent you in the parliament, etc., etc. And then it goes on and it further divides itself in terms of the system. And it says, well, some of the representatives will make up the government. And they have certain responsibilities. And so on. This system is set up that way.
Yes.
Right?
I agree with you.
So I think it might be helpful if when we're debating, we first set the groundwork as to how the system is. Yes. And then I think we can get a better understanding as to, don't think that can help?
Yes, Bebo. As I say, it's those people who find themselves not in government but on the opposition belt. Sometimes they let themselves down. I find they become lazy, and because naturally they're not concerned with the people after them. Bebo, they are into just the political hype to power. That's what they're into. They're not people's person. I mean, there's a very good and hard trying sports young man around. How often do they go and speak to these young men and try to uplift their moral and try to put them on that steady path of progress?
Okay, let me go back to the lines. Naya, good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hi, Mr. Robert Jarvis.
Yes, okay. It seems as if we are ready. Let's go down. Hello. Yes, we're on the air now.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Fellow citizens, President. The results of the by-election held today, 5th March 2020, are in. But before I share this information with you, the public, I must take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and the personal sacrifice of men and women contributed to the successful exercise today. The Electoral Commission, led by Chairman Nasib Butler, Commissioner Joseph Liburd, and Commissioner Jason Hamilton, provided invaluable guidance. The staff of the Electoral Office, and in particular Mrs. Claxton, Ms. Liebert, and Mr. Wallace, who are here with me tonight, the staff in the St. Kitts office, all the registration officers who ensured the registration of voters and the production of the voters list. Today's electoral workers, the drivers, the police, the party agents, the caterers, the staff at the voting centers, the driver, the candidates who offered their service. You have done a remarkable job, and I offer my thanks to all of you. I also want to thank the media houses for their coverage and the many persons who offered prayers on our behalf. The candidates, as you will recall, were Mr. Keith Scarborough of the Concerned Citizens Movement, whose symbol was the hammer, and Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds.
The candidates, as you will recall, were Mr. Keith Scarborough of the Concerned Citizens Movement, whose symbol was the hammer, and Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds of the Nevis Reformation Party, whose symbol was the bottle. The votes cast were as follows. In polling division 5-1A, the Cotton Gown Community Center, where 285 voters were assigned, those whose last surnames started with A to those whose last name started with K. The votes cast in favor of Mr. Scarborough were 34, 3-4, and the votes cast in favor of Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, 113. There were no spoiled ballots, and there were 2 rejected ballots. Number of votes cast, therefore, 149. That is 149. Polling Division 5-1B, again at the Cotton Ground Community Center, where 294 voters were assigned, those whose last names started with L to those whose last names started with Y. The votes cast in favor of Mr. Scarborough, 41-4-1. Votes cast in favor of Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, 83-8-3. No spoiled ballots and 3 rejected ballots, for a total number of votes cast of 127. Polling Division 5-2A, Jessop's Community Center, where 330 voters were assigned, those whose last name started with A to those whose last name started with K. The votes cast in favor of Mr. Scarborough, 42-4-2. Votes cast in favor of Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, 119. No spoiled ballots, 1 rejected ballots. Total number of votes cast, 162. In polling division 5-2B, again the Jessop's Community Center, where 328 voters were assigned, those whose last name started with L to those whose last name started with Z. Votes cast in favor of Mr. Scarborough, 38-3-8. Votes cast in favor of Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, 119. No spoiled ballots, 1 rejected ballots. Total number of votes cast, 158. Polling Division 5-3, the Nevis Performing Arts Center, where 297 voters were assigned. Votes cast in favor of Mr. Scarborough, 36-3-6. Votes cast in favor of Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, 80-0. No spoiled ballots, 1 rejected ballots, for a total number of votes cast of 117. In summary, therefore, for Nevis District 5, the parish of St. Thomas Lowlands, of the 1,533 voters assigned, 713 persons voted for a voter turnout of 46.5%. Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds received 514,514 of the votes validly cast, while Mr. Keith Scarborough received 191,191 of the votes validly cast. Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, therefore, has been declared the winner of Nevis District 5. We wish her all the best as she accepts this new challenge. May God continue to bless her and indeed all of us. Thank you and good night.
Cleared already. And again, as I said, we congratulate them for the early vote, the early thing. We will see whether or not that's the same format that is used for the federal elections. I am sure that persons will have their views and there will be a discussion on the format that has been used. But, Jovan, why don't we, for the benefit of our listeners, go over those numbers again? But just to tell you that the winner has been declared. The Nevis Reformation Party has successfully defended that seat. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, the winner, and getting 514 votes, and Keith Ditton, that's Scarborough of the CCM, 191, and we congratulate the winners, and also better luck next time to the losers. So could you go over the numbers again, Jovan?
Okay, very quickly, Webo. In polling station 1A, Cotton Ground Community Center, where there were 285 voters, we saw CCM getting, Keith Scarborough getting 34, and Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 113, 2 rejected, total vote cast 149. 1B, Cotton Ground Community Center, 294 registered voters. Keith Scarborough 41, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 83, 2 rejected, total votes cast 127. 2A, Jessup's Community Center, 330 registered voters. Keith Scarborough 42, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 119, 1 rejected, a total of 162 votes cast. Polling station 2B, Jessup's Community Center, total registered voters 328, Keith Scarborough 38, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 119, 1 rejected, 158 votes cast. Polling station 3, Nevis Performing Arts Theatre, total registered voters 297, 36 of those votes going to Keith Scarborough, 80 going to Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds, 1 rejected, a total of 117. So out of 1,534 voters, Keith this and that Scarborough 191, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 514, rejected 8, total votes cast 438. It means, therefore, like you have said, Webo, that Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds would have won that constituency. If we are going to look quickly at terms of percentages, we saw there that there was a voter turnout of 52.28% in the Cotton Ground Community Center. In polling station 1A, 43.2% in the polling station 1B, 49.09% in polling station 2A, Jessup Community Center, 48.17% in polling station 2B, and polling station 3, 39.39%. Total voter turnout of 46.48%. In terms of the votes cast, Keith this and that Scarborough, of the 34 he would have gotten at polling station 1A, he would have gotten 11.93% of the votes cast, whereas Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds would have gotten 39.65. Rejected ballots there were 0.70%. In terms of polling station 1A, Keith Scarborough 13.95% of the votes cast, Cleone Stapleton 28.23%, rejected ballots 1.02. Jessup's Community Center 1B, Keith Scarborough 12.93% of the votes cast, Cleone Stapleton 36.06, rejected ballots 0.30. Jessup Community 2B, Keats Scarborough 11.59%, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 36.28%, rejected ballots again 0.30. And finally, Nevis Performing Arts Theatre, Keats Scarborough 12.12%, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 26.94%, rejected ballots 0.38%. Means therefore that Keats Scarborough would have gotten 12.45% of the vote cast, Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 33.51%, rejected ballots 0.52%.
Now go over those numbers again.
Again, total
if one
votes.
person get 12.5%.
Say again?
Did you say that Keats Scarborough got
12.45% of the votes?
Yes.
And Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds 33.51%.
What kind of math is that?
I told you guys that was the wrong formula.
No.
There was a total vote cast. That is of the total votes cast.
No, what percentage of the vote they got cast?
No, I did say that. 39.39%.
Oh, 39.3%.
Yes, I did say that.
And she got how much?
Of the total votes, okay. Let's back up here, let's back up. Of the total votes cast there were 1,534 votes. Let me just go slowly. 1,534 registered voters. Keats Scarborough got 191. Cleone Stapleton got 514. Rejected ballots 713. Voters turnout 46.48.
Yeah, but what the figure you were talking about is of the votes cast, what percentage?
Okay, I did them by boxes, Webo.
Okay, well, that's all right. Bran, I'll get that figure for you.
Okay.
Bran, because that's arithmetic. Bran, you go ahead. Give us an explanation why your candidate did the way he did.
Well, Babo, obviously, we didn't do as well as we anticipated and as well as we expected. The total votes. I think we initially spoke about the Nevis Performing Arts Theatre. That is down to 39% of the total vote in that particular box. When you look at the total vote that is cast, some 46 point, what's that, 5%? 46 point something percent. That is one of the, if not the lowest voter turnout on a record. That is the lowest number I'm seeing here on all of these percentage from 2011 down to 2013, 2015, 2017, even in the federal election. The voter turnout is, and I saw that today when I was at NIPAC, that the numbers were not coming out. Well, but like I said, we did not do as well as we anticipated. I want to say to Ms. Simmonds, congratulations. I think that she was able to hold on to the seat that was traditionally an NRP seat. So
okay, Brand, yes. I don't know if you all have the numbers here, but I just did it. Keats Scarborough, therefore, of the votes that were cast, got approximately 28%, and Cleone Simmonds got 72%. Now, from my information over the past and stuff like that, I think that statistically the CCM did a little better. You know why? Because normally I think that the NRP wins that with about 80%. We can check the numbers a little later on and we'll see.
The truth of the matter is, though, if you compare these figures to 2017,
what do we get?
Mr. Parry got 518 total votes, and Mrs. Cleone Stapleton-Simmonds got 514. She's just down by 4.
Yeah, but how many people showed up? That's the point.
I don't know.
How many people voted?
I'm saying the point I'm trying to make, and it's first past the post. She did almost as well as Mr. Parry did. You had an increase, yes, in the total registration, and that would have been up. I don't have the percentage. I have not worked percentages on that one. But I'm just saying, in terms of the raw numbers, the new registrants, maybe they're the ones who didn't turn out to vote, I don't know. But I'm just making the point that she did not do much, worse off than what Mr. Parry did. She just lost 4
Okay, the
votes.
paper that you have, Jovan, let me go to Jovan. The paper that you have with the numbers for 2017, how many people voted?
In 2000, in
758.
758.
758.
Yes.
758, right.
Okay,
It's number
and
28.
758. And the NRP candidate got how much?
518.
Okay, so what percentage is that? You want me to work it again?
750.
No. That's, I should have that information. Right? Just give me a minute.
Okay. You see, what I'm saying is, when you do certain comparisons, you go by a percentage amount,
Yes, Bebo,
right?
I understand.
And
514.
the
514 over 746 multiplied by 100 over.
okay. In the meantime, Mr. Brand, you just go ahead and explain again why.
We also see that in 2017. We also see in 2017, Keith Scarborough would have netted some 229 votes. This time around, he got 191. So he has even fallen off from 2017 by some 38 votes.
Yes, but he wants to do it, make the comparison by percentages.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's significant.
746.
But anyway. But what I thought was interesting though, Webo, is that at the same Nevis before the NEPAC box, this and that did like 30. He lost. Well, not that he lost, but he did not make up the 35. At least he couldn't find the extra 35 people who voted for him last time to push him over.
Yeah, that's where he fallen off right there.
Or 25. Sorry. So maybe that's the half of the people who didn't show up for you.
Okay, so well,
25,
listen.
25.6%.
How about we do this then? Any final words from everybody? Edric?
Well, we have to congratulate Ms. Simmonds for the victory. And of course, it was based primarily predicated on the weight of Joseph Parry. Simply because those people voted for him in the past. I saw him slowing through today, and he, in fact, did the work that was necessary. She won, and Mr. Parry, of course, can claim victory, that what he had done over the many, many years continues. We have to say congratulations to Mr. Scarborough for participating. It needed bigger effort, and as I mentioned last night, Tuesday night, that the kingpin was voted